Hi, my name's Valerie Parente, and I haven't done a poetry reading in a while, so I'm going to read from Rather Be Haunted, and then I'm going to analyze some of the poems for you. All right. Oh, I know there was one called Dissonant Demons that I was thinking about the other day that I wanted to read, so let me just find that. I think it's on the earlier end. Dissonant Demons. Okay, Dissonant Demons, and this was written on March 4th of 2019. Dissonant Demons. My eyes want to cry, but I'm not sad in my mind. My body wants to be burned, but my heart is already warm. I'm trying to think of ways to hurt myself without causing pain. These demons, they try to stay relevant, but my glorious God is not hell-bent. So it's dark, but it's actually a positive poem because Dissonant Demons, I remember exactly why I wrote it. Dissonant Demons was written after I had a date that didn't go bad, but it didn't result in a second date. And it was during a time where I was very stressed out about being alone, and I was really hoping it would work out. We got along, it was great, but when I asked, do you want to see me again? He was like, oh, we don't really have anything in common. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I was thinking that too, but I was willing to go on the second one. But so after that, I had the strange dissonance inside of feeling like I should be upset because I was rejected, and rejection in my whole life prior was so painful, but I wasn't upset. I didn't actually feel bothered by it at all, and I kept thinking that it was this dissonance inside me that was saying, you are supposed to be upset. The pattern states that you've always been upset when something like this happens, but you're not. And I genuinely didn't feel like I was at all. So Dissonant Demons is about feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to be bothered. I'm supposed to be sad. I'm supposed to be this, but I'm not. I'm just not. Which kind of reminds me, on a side note, before I pick at some lines, this is the feeling, this dissonance, this sense of dissonance and this disconnect, and it's not matching, reminds me a lot, as I read it now, of when I first started taking medication for my OCD. There were these moments, and it took a while, it took weeks for me to notice any difference, but there were things that I would go to do that normally I wouldn't do. One of the things that when I was a teenager, if I turned on the shower, the dial, I would put a tissue between my hand and the dial because I didn't want to get germs on me, even though I was about to wash up, but I didn't want to directly touch the dial. So I would usually put a tissue between, and I just remember this is a key moment where I realized my medication was working. I went and did it without the tissue, without thinking twice, and then literally the split second after the behavior was carried out, I had this moment of, oh, you're supposed to be upset right now. Because I was so used to the habit, and my brain was so used to, you're supposed to be bothered by these OCD things. You're supposed to be anxious, but you're not. There was a dissonance. I'm supposed to be bothered. I'm supposed to be doing this, but I didn't. And I'm okay, and I'm alive, and everything's okay. But I, but it's so natural. It feels so natural inside me to have not needed the tissue, and it was weird. So this is very similar, this sense of dissonance between my disorder and my bad habits of being depressed or low self-esteem in this case, but it didn't correlate with how I really felt in the moment. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but the lines, my eyes want to cry, but I'm not sad in my mind, your body's reaction, you go into this autopilot mode of I usually cry when something like this happens, but I'm not sad in my mind. And then my body wants to be burned, but my heart is already warm. Just the that's directly about, well, something like this would, past Val, would make me want to self-harm, but my body was like, you're supposed to be like itching at your skin right now, and you're supposed to be crawling in your skin, but I wasn't. And that was this phrase, my body wants to be burned, but my heart is already warm. I felt warm in my heart and okay with myself and comfortable with myself. I'm trying to think of ways to hurt myself without causing pain. Again, just this habit of, oh, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to hurt myself in some way, but I don't really want to be in pain because I'm not really upset with myself. And then at the end, these demons, they try to stay relevant, but my glorious God is not hell-bent. So that Dissonant Demons sense, I think it was specifically about an incident of going on a date and the rejection I was feeling, but not really upset about it. I was okay and confident, and I had self-esteem, and I felt good about it anyways. That, I think, kind of parallels how I feel when I'm overcoming OCD. Like I told you earlier, when I do I don't do a certain behavior, I don't do a compulsion by accident. It fleets from my brain, and then the moment after of, oh, you were supposed to be upset, you were supposed to be anxious, you were supposed to be freaked out by that. So that's what Dissonant Demons was about. March of 2019. What else can we read? There's so much in here that I haven't read because I just felt kind of like this was my most recent published work, and it was so close to home and it felt so personal that a lot of these hurt to read. But honestly, in the past probably like 2 weeks, I have felt absolutely totally over all the issues that were in here, just over it, and not in like a I'm done way, like I really genuinely, and this goes with Dissonant Demons, I guess, I really genuinely am not upset anymore, and my obsessive mind that goes in cycles is like, oh, you're supposed to be upset, but I'm just not. So I'm in a good place where a lot of these painful poems, I've moved on and I don't really care. They'll always have a place in my heart because this was a lot of this whole book what I went through in writing these poems was a major learning lesson. Lesson learned. Did I say that weird? I don't know, but I needed to feel the pain that I felt so that I could grow up and, become more mature and more evolved as a person and more ready for the next step in my life. So, sorry about that little rant, but kind of went with the last poem. Yeah, so these might be a little specific about a certain situation of hurt, but just know that I don't feel this way anymore. I could read that one. Let's read. Sorry, I know I'm taking a lot. Oh, there was one. This is really short. Let me find it because I really liked this one. It is. I'm not gonna give away what it's about. Let me read it first. Okay, yeah. Self-Sufficient Psyche, written on February 28th of 2020. So Self-Sufficient Psyche is just 2 lines. It says, "How dare you make me feel crazy when you know I could do that all on my own." I was thinking about this the other day. This went with what I wrote it about was gaslighting, which I didn't know at the time what gaslighting was. I didn't know that term. I heard the term before, but I didn't understand what it was. And then after I had written this and gone through and read, I was like, oh, this is the perfect poem about gaslighting, because gaslighting is when somebody basically makes you feel like you're crazy and it's all in your head when they know that it is real. Like in this case, treating you badly and then being like, well, you're just a crazy bitch, that's all in your head. This, how dare you make me feel crazy when you know I could do that all on my own. That's like, oh God, that hurts so deep as someone with OCD, because I do obsess about things and I genuinely can't help it. And people are like, I've been called like a creep or crazy, and why are you still thinking about so and so when they don't care about you, they don't think about you once, blah blah blah, like things that were years and years and years ago, bothersome, that have stuck with me as bothersome. But, nobody else is still hanging on to these grudges like you. So it's really easy for me to naturally obsess and get upset about things that are really not rationally, it's not rational to even still be thinking about it. But there's this really difficult thing with me for having OCD where it does come so naturally, and I've had this my whole life. Ever since I was little, I've been obsessive and not let go of things, and I didn't notice that that was weird and that other people don't do that to the extent I do. That when I was called out for it and told I was a crazy bitch, it really hurt because I really genuinely wasn't trying to be that way. It was just a quality of my being. I was writing a poem the other day and I didn't finish it, but I was thinking obsessing and not forgetting what people say to me is just a quality of my being, like longing for romance. That's how innate it is in me and how natural it is. And for everyone in the world, unless you're asexual, really, but almost everyone in the world wants a partner and wants romance, and they can't help it. It's not, there's nothing wrong with them, but it's about, that's what it means. That's part of being human, is wanting a companion. And people feel that way very naturally. That quality of being that is just innate in people, that is not going to change, and that controls how people act and carry out their life. That's how I feel about obsessing and remembering how people make me feel or exactly what they say to me. It is so, what's the word I'm looking for? I've said natural already a lot, but it really is just another quality of my being that I don't question. So it does hurt when people get mad at you for it, because I really am not trying to be weird. It's like, I'm sorry, I get carried away. This brain in my head gets very carried away, and with the emotions that I feel, I really drag things on that nobody else is thinking about. So when in this poem, how dare you make me feel crazy, when you know I could do that all on my own, that's why I think gaslighting is especially cruel when you have OCD. Um, Cruel when you have any kind of anxiety disorder where you are irrationally anxious and you don't think about logic. So when this was written, these were people, this happened multiple times where people knew I had problems with OCD, and that it affected my self-esteem, and that I was constantly questioning, is this rational? Is this normal? Is it normal for me to be upset about this? Is it normal for me to focus on this? And then people being like, so I was already self-aware of that. And so in this case, when people took that and this was work related, when people knew I had the OCD, I was vulnerable enough to open up and explain that I have this issue, but it shouldn't get in the way of my work, because I really am working on it, and it's not on purpose if I make a little mistake. It's the main thing was I was taking medication that made me a little forgetful. It would make my thoughts go fleeting. So I would, if I started one thing and then the phone rang, I would totally forget to do the other thing once I was off the phone. So people knew that at work. And there were times where certain people would complain that they would pull me aside and be like, how do I say this in a way that's not calling anyone out? For a while, I was gaslit there, where when I didn't actually do things wrong, and when I confronted and said, I think it's annoying that I'm being criticized for this because I didn't actually do anything wrong, and you're being mean to me, being told, well, that's just in your head. That's just your OCD. And it was really hurtful to me that people would take this personal thing that I was hesitant to open up about, that I have a mental illness, because who wants to say that when they're working? It was a long time coming. I finally said that. I felt like they used that against me, and they used that to make me feel crazy, and I was gaslit and told it was all in my head. You're just a crazy person. This is all in your head. You're making this up. No one's actually being mean to you. No one's actually out to get you. Like, yeah, okay. Um, but that poem is what that reminds me of. How dare you make me feel crazy when you damn well know I'm constantly self conscious. I'm trying to catch myself when I'm crazy. So that's super cruel of you to say you're being crazy when you damn well know that you are being cruel and rude. But, she has a mental disorder, so we'll just scapegoat it on that. That's what that poem's about. Very short. Right, what else can we read? Oh, let's do Love is Immortal. A little more sappy, but I do know that when I wrote this, it wasn't. We'll talk about it. Love is Immortal, written on February 7th of 2020. Love is when your soul recognizes another soul. And you'll know when you feel that love because the body will seem as inanimate as clay, while the ego is just an arbitrary layer in space. And the light you sense through this reality charade could ignite an entire universe with a single gaze. Because love is when two energies combine and spawn an endless chain of life. I wrote this right. I remember being kind of blown away because I actually wrote this right before a good family friend passed away. And I always looked back at this poem thinking in the back of my mind like this was a poem I wrote after a death, but it was actually right before. But it was like, it was very applicable. So it wasn't meant to be romantic. Love is Immortal is not meant to be a romantic type of love. It's more of just that love of your peers, your family, your friends, humanity as a whole. So I was trying to think to myself, when I feel love radiate off of someone and really am having a good time, and I feel like I'm glowing because the love inside me is so bright. I was trying to think of how to define that. And I said, well, it feels like my soul can see your soul. And that's why I wrote love is when your soul recognizes another soul. And I definitely think that's true. And I'm not just, it can be romantic, but I was writing this in general, that when I'm glowing inside because I'm having such a good time and I just love your company, that's because the soul that I innately am beyond this body in this material world recognizes your soul in this crazy, extravagant charade called life. And that's this whole, that goes to another line. And you'll know when you feel that love. You do know when you feel it because the body will seem as inanimate as clay, which is like what I just said. You see beyond the body. The body is nothing when your soul recognizes another soul. Bodies are just, like it says, they look like clay. They look like any other inanimate object, just another piece of furniture in the room. And that is a very interesting line that I specifically thought about one time when I didn't quite have an out-of-body experience, but I had a surreal moment one time when I was in the bookstore and I was reading about near-death experiences, where I was really feeling in touch with what I was beyond the body, that when I was just sitting there reading, it looked like in the corner of my eyes, even though I was looking at the page, my hands holding the book and everything that was my figure and my frame didn't feel like it could be categorized as me. It looked like clay, inanimate. There was no life to it. It was just this other thing in the background. It was a really cool feeling. It wasn't an out-of-body experience. I don't know if there's a name for that. There probably is, but I don't know it. It was just this moment of feeling in touch with my spirit and recognizing that my spirit lives in a dimension that is not what I'm seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, feeling. the reality that I perceive is not where my spirit lives, where I, the thing that you call I, lives. So that's where I got that line, because the body will seem as inanimate as clay when you feel love. And then, and you'll know when you feel that love because the body will seem as inanimate as clay, while the ego is just an arbitrary layer in space. Ego is another thing. It's not your soul, it's a person, it's personified, it goes with humans. The ego doesn't feel like, it just feels like another inanimate thing. It's just another layer in this time and space that we have called reality. It's nothing. And the light you sense through this reality charade, because again, this all feels fake and not like the real deal. The soul world feels like the real deal. So, in the light you sense through this reality charade could ignite an entire universe with a single gaze. That's the recognizing another soul. You can see souls, I think, in eyes. That's why when someone passes, you can watch the life leave, and you can't really explain you can't adequately explain what that is that you saw vanish, but it was soul, it was spirit. And when you see someone who's passed and their eyes are still open, there's something that you can't put words to that is gone, but it is otherworldly, and it is to the other world now. So just a single gaze could ignite an entire universe. Yes, that's how it feels. And then, which is, I won't get into that actually. And it finishes off saying, because love is when two energies combine and spawn an endless chain of life. And I think, in a metaphorical way, I do think that people connect and have a child, and that is like the greatest expression of love, where you are creating a life, an entire new mental universe is being created. And that is literally what I think happens when people love in a romantic way. But I also think just the act of loving in a I recognize you type of way is so unbelievably powerful. It feels reminiscent of, I think, a god or whatever spawned the universe. And I feel like when you have that I'm glowing because I recognize your soul kind of feeling, it feels like you could burst and just big bang an entire whole new realm. That, that's a far-fetched thing to say. I know it's a very spiritual thing to say. It's definitely, I don't necessarily mean literally, but I feel like when you recognize love and recognize a soul in another person, it feels like a whole universe has exploded into existence, which I guess is definitely, that parallels the whole idea of making a child and having a child. It's a whole nother universe called someone's perception that you just brought into existence. So that was 3 poems. That was Dissonant Demons, Self-Sufficient Psyche, and Love is Immortal. And they're all from Rather Be Haunted. And if you're interested in buying Rather Be Haunted, this is available on Amazon.com. Thank you. Bye.